Hi, everyone, and welcome to my next in the series of interviews with interesting spiritual people. Today we have Francesca. Hello.
Hello, darling. How are you?
I'm fabulous. How are you?
I am really well today. Thank you.
Good. So Francesca is I follow her on, I think I've got a girl crush on you spiritually. I follow you on your Instagram. We follow each other, and you have come up with some really interesting things about astrology. And astrology is something that I've always been interested in and haven't had the time to properly explore, but it's amazing. It's just I focus my attention towards other things. So we have people like you who might be able to help us with more of these interesting things. So tell us about you and what's going on with you at the moment, please, lovely.
Okay, what is going on with me? Hello, thank you for having me first. It looks beautiful where you are. Very jealous of that. I'm an astrologer and I started doing astrology. I mean, I was really young and I got into it. And then I met a clairvoyant when I was on the day of my Saturn return, who told me I was going to be an astrologer, and I'd done it in all my past lives. That was only after I'd worked out what time she was born. So she psychically read me, and then we went to get our coats. And then, and then when we were getting our coats, I was like, "We born at 8 p.m." She's like, "How do you know?" That was the beginning of that, and she told me I was going to be an astrologer, and I am. And I've also studied numerology, palmistry, tarot, bit of psychic development, but astrology and numerology really vibe with where I'm at. And I've just made a TV show called Written in the Stars, which will be out, I don't actually know when, November. And that's all about astrology matchmaking, which is really, I mean, that was a dream. That was a real dream to make. And I've been doing this for 7 years now. So I do feel like I'm at a turning point. You know, it's a maturation. It's the 7-year itch is a thing. So I'm kind of redefining what I'm about at the minute.
Ooh. Tell us more about the show. What's this matchmaking show? How does that all work?
I'm not sure. I'll say what's in press releases. You know what it's like having done TV,
of course.
Antonia. So yeah, and I am a Sag, so I do tend to overshare. So it's basically like Love Island, but with a little bit of astrology matchmaking. So we matchmade people, and then we kind of worked with them through their relationships. There were 3 astrologers.
So it's sort of almost like Marriage at First Sight or something, where they matchmake you completely, but do they actually get along in your show?
Well, you have to watch and see.
Oh,
we've got a bit of a delay.
Yes, I know. Is the internet funny? Is it my end or yours? I'm not sure. Oh, you're cutting out a bit, my end. I'll do some magic and see if we can fix it.
What magic?
I do magic. There's sometimes a sabotage on sometimes it's just sabotage, energetic sabotage, and I just go and slay some demons and it all goes away. It's all fine.
Okay.
Typical stuff, you know.
Did this stay in the edit? I hope so.
I'm not editing. The first couple of seconds maybe, but I don't bother. I just think we'll just put it out on Instagram. We're just going to have a little teaser for it, but then on YouTube it's just going to be as it is.
Yeah, cool.
So so relationship astrology sounds interesting. So do you often get partners and figure out whether they're made for each other, and then do you tell them it's not going to work out for you?
In real life, yeah. I mean, I've been doing this for years. Yeah. I think of course it's, I mean, I don't know much about your work, and I hope you tell me more today. But with all spiritual work, there is the development of the soul and the individual, isn't there? So it's like, yes, you've got your chart, but how developed are you? How awake are you? Not awake, because that's a bit patronizing, but how in tune with yourself are you? And so yes, you can be compatible, but you can also, you know, not be the great version of yourself. But there is definite stuff, there are definite zings that makes you want to know someone, or the sense of familiarity, which again, is that always a good thing? When someone feels familiar, you could be going back to some kind of childhood wound, but that's then an opportunity to deal with it through the relationship, which is probably a positive thing. So there's definite astrology that just gels, and there's astrology that is like quite tense.
So do you think you can transcend your chart? You know, because I know that people have sort of weaknesses and things that might need addressing? Do you think that you can actually not really be a victim of your personality or what your chart says you may be?
I was thinking this last night because I'm watching all Joe Dispenza's retreat at the moment. And there's a lot of, you can transcend yourself, transcend your memories, transcend your beliefs, but ultimately you can turn genes on and off, but you can't change the genes that are there. And I feel that that's what it's like with astrology as well. You can't suddenly not be a human and change to be an elephant. You're a human. I mean, you might do some shape shifting and your soul and all the weird mystical stuff, but ultimately we are working with ourselves. And I think that's true of astrology as well, in as much as you will always be a Scorpio and there's nothing you can do about that. So you can do levels of scorpionic behavior, and you could be the mystical, magical, deep, sensitive, alchemical woman, or you could be the vindictive, possessive, wounded, overly emotional woman. You can be anything along that spectrum, plus your whole birth chart, anything, and you can transcend yourself and your previous limits. But I'm not sure that we can completely switch ourselves off and you could suddenly one day start behaving like something else.
I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned Joe Dispenza's work. I love him, and I also love Bruce Lipton. And Bruce Lipton says you can't switch on genes on and off. What he says is genes are a blueprint. So his version of it, which is sort of a bit of a side note, but it's quite interesting, is he says diseases, because I know more about diseases in astrology, so I'm just relating it to the stuff that I'm familiar with.
Yeah.
And I know quite a lot about diseases. So what he says is, we have, for example, diseases which are said to be genetic diseases.
Yeah.
He says less than 2% of diseases are actually genetic. They are hereditary, and there's a nuance between the two. Now, genetics are things which are literally in your genetics, something like Down syndrome. You were born with a different genetic component, and it's a genetic disease. But things that we consider to be genetic diseases, like heart disease running in the family, or maybe cancer, or all these other diseases, are hereditary. And what causes diseases is your thinking. It's about you getting fixated on some particular way of thinking, and then because you obviously grow up with your parents, it's the way that they think, which is then you learn it down the line. So also with that, if you look at when I studied psychology at school, and if you look at twins who were separated at birth, or people who are adopted, which diseases do they get? Is it the birth parents? It's a nature-nurture argument. Is it the birth parents, or is it the ones from the adoptive parents? And it tends to be the adoptive parents. It is not necessarily your genes. It is actually more the way you think, and the way you think can then cause you to have different diseases. So it may be the same for astrology. I don't know. What do you think?
Honestly, it's I'm thinking about it all the time. And the astrology, but your potentials are there. I'd love actually to look at twins then who've been brought up differently. My dad's a twin, and I've got a lot of twins in my life, and you can see things you manifest, but astrologically it's the same symbolism, but it could to a normal person or a non-literate astrologer seem like completely different things. My feeling is now that the astrology rules the roost, and it kind of is the container for who we are and all of our potentials, and our environment and our understanding and our beliefs work with what we've got there astrologically. I might change my mind one day, but at the minute, I say that because I have changed my mind on things that I never thought I would change my mind on. So now I'm much more on the fence in life, because I realize I can be so passionate about something and then change. But as far as I can tell from everything I see, the world, flavors, plants, cycles, summer, winter, autumn, these things are reality. These are nature, and we can work with nature, but the sun is going to rise and set, and there are certain things we can't change.
Well, I think it's good to be able to paradigm shift when you realize and you get some new information. I think that's sorely lacking in society. David Wilcock, who I'm a very big fan of, he was talking in one of his shows about these twins who were separated at birth, who ended up bumping into each other at some county fair or something. And they both looked identical, like they were the same weight, they had the same sort of beards, the wives had the same name, they literally were living parallel lives, they worked in similar industries, they actually were pretty much identical, and everything was different, within their upbringing apart from their genetics. So it's quite an interesting idea.
Yeah, I love it. There's so much to explore.
So what's your medical astrology? Tell me about that, because I think there's going to be some sort of cross-referencing on here, and it'll be interesting. What's your story on that?
Yeah, well, I nearly did medicine. That was always my thing. I was always kind of sciencey, but couldn't ever, the pull, the desire, the instinct, the urge to actually do it never happened. And then once I started studying astrology and discovered that medical astrology was a thing, I was like, oh my God, that is so going to be what I do. Yeah, exactly. So I think it was probably 6 months into studying astrology that we had our first medical astrology day. And, it was just simple things like eating by the moon. And your moon is who you are deep down. It's your emotions, but it's also your body. And so if you can understand something about your body from the astrology, and if we understand that Aries is the first sign of the Zodiac and it rules the head and it's hot and it's fiery, then you can also understand that you're going to get hot, fiery fevers, flares, acne, all kind of hot stuff with Aries, and Mars rules Aries. So if you then have Mars transits, you can expect hot moments, accidents, impulsivity, rashes, inflammation. Mars will bring heat. And so everything in astrology, that's what I mean when I'm talking about, can we transcend our astrology? It is more than just like, oh, your personality, you're a bit hot-headed. This is everything. This is what you look like. This is what you're built like. This is your propensity towards illness. So, the cat is doing.
I was getting attacked there. Sorry.
Mars attack. And so it's huge. And then I studied medical astrology. Now there's a lot of medical astrology is an ancient practice, and the traditional astrology likes to associate very much with medical astrology. And so there is it's not completely easy to define how to do it, because some astrologers are modernizing and using modern Western astrology as a tool to be able to diagnose. But so my course was called medical astrology, and it's changed to esoteric astrology, is what I'm trying to say in brief, because it wasn't approved as medical, but it was taught by a doctor who is also a homeopath, herbal medic, psychic, all the things. And we would have case studies come in, and we learned so much just through looking at their charts and diagnosing and looking at timing. And you can see tendencies, and you can see, particularly for more expert medical astrologers, you can see solutions.
So are certain signs more likely to get certain diseases?
Of course, you're looking at the whole chart, remember, but always I just have to reiterate that for everyone listening, that it's not just your star sign. But Leo does rule the heart, so you're going to look at heart things. Maybe for someone who has a lot of planets in Leo, it might not be your sun sign, but the sun also is the heart, because it's the center of the body. So it's the circulation system. It's our life generator. So you might see certain tendencies. And Taurus, it stagnates, it's slow. Taurus is ponderous and it's fixed and it's earth. So there can be constipation in Taurus because it needs, and that's why you need a lot of green juice and a lot of movement in Taurian energy, because it's dense. And with Gemini, you've got a lot of light, mobile nerves. It rules the nerves and the hands, and so
you're more likely to have anxiety or something if you're Gemini.
And asthma. The rules the upper. So, but of course, I'm not just talking about your sun sign. So it's looking at the chart and your 6th house, perhaps, which is the house of health and healing in the birth chart. But you can get an understanding of what might be there, or what might be being triggered by transits.
That's fascinating, isn't it?
Oh,
so
yeah.
You say you can resolve things with working on their but by understanding people's charts. How do you resolve illnesses through their chart?
It's just understanding the psychology sometimes as well, because a lot of disease, it's, as Bruce Lipton, I imagine, and Joe Dispenza say, it's all emotions and comes from the mind anyway.
Look at dis-ease. Look at the word dis-ease, lack of ease. So that's a really good place to start. But as far as I'm concerned, I mean, I've come up with this, my grand theory of disease, and I've worked out that disease is just basically stuck emotions. And it just goes from 3 different categories. It goes from a gas to a liquid to a solid. So gas-based diseases are thought-based diseases. So, you know, when you hang around someone anxious or angry, you spend 2 seconds with them, it makes you immediately feel anxious or angry because they're just radiating that energy from them, and it picks you up and takes you off. Or a depressed person, same sort of thing. Or if you've got, so they're thought-based diseases. Liquid-based diseases are something like chronic pain, because it flows around like a liquid. If you look at back pain, sometimes it's a 2 out of 10, sometimes a 10 out of 10, sometimes fibromyalgia. It's not in the same location and it's not the same severity. And then you've got something like a cyst, it's a literal ball of fluid. Or blood-based ones would also be liquids. Immune ones would think about lymph, that would be liquid as well. And you've got solid-based diseases, which is something like a cancer. Cancers, a tumor is rock hard. You press a tumor, it's solid as a rock. And what happens is we get fixated on a particular way of thinking, and it just densifies because it goes into finite space. So enough gas into a finite space, keep pumping, will eventually become a liquid, will eventually become a solid. And it's just that compression of our thoughts is what diseases are caused by, for my way of working. Then I dissolve the resonance with it and diseases fall out of people. That's how I do it.
That's what I do.
Simple.
Yeah, well, I mean, I didn't know what to expect when I went to the Joe Dispenza retreat, but to see people healed like that, I think he's working with beings. So have you heard this?
I don't know. I saw something a bit controversial about Joe Dispenza the other day. I don't know. The jury's out. I love the scientific side of it, but I don't know any of the being stuff. Tell me.
He just mentioned it on saying that there's some big beings, and when the energy in the room is really high, these beings can only come to a high vibration. So mostly on Earth, we're too dense and too low vibe. But when he gets a load of people together and the room gets really high vibe, they come in and then they'll help people heal.
What multidimensional beings, like higher, dimensional beings?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know. I know that John of God used beings, and now John of God's not liked very much because he was a paedophile.
I don't know about that.
Do you know John of God?
No.
John of God was living in Brazil, and he was doing a lot of miraculous healings, but someone would have cataracts, and he would be using a being that would come inside of him and almost use him like a puppet, like use his body to be able to use him. And he would stick a blooming scalpel inside of someone's eye and actually remove their cataracts, and, you know, do quite a lot of surgery. And they wouldn't be under anesthetic, but they'd be fine. He healed a lot of people doing a lot of things. And he was in a mountain, and there was loads of quartz around, which I think was elevating his energy system. But it looks like he was like doing child trafficking and all sorts of really bad stuff as well. But he was a good healer. I don't know. No.
God. Okay.
He got arrested for child trafficking. He was farming women. Anyway, moving on. But I don't know that. I mean, the Joe Dispenza stuff is really interesting. I really like the way that he uses science, because that's really cool that he's able to really find the science behind spirituality, which I think has been sorely lacking for a long time. And he does, there's a lot of miraculous work that happens from his students and disciples and all the rest of it. So that's always really positive. I'm really into all of that.
Yeah. Where were we?
We were talking about solid, liquid, gas. And we're talking about how I was doing healing before that.
Oh, and decumbature. So in the Renaissance, you couldn't be a doctor without being an astrologer, because for the timing, so the first, I think Bologna is the second university and Padua is the first, or vice versa, in Italy. And to be a doctor there, you had to be an astrologer, because at a full moon you don't do operations because you bleed so much.
Oh, wow.
That's like a very basic bit.
Or have tattoos.
Oh, really?
Well, I don't know. You shouldn't do. When you have tattoos, you can't have aspirin before you have a tattoo, or be drinking. And I mean, obviously the drinking is because you might make mistakes and you might move and all the rest of it, but it's a lot about how thin your blood is.
Interesting.
Aspirin thins your blood, you bleed more. So you're not allowed to have aspirin for a tattoo, or you're not allowed to, have drinks, as I said.
There we go. So maybe, don't do it at full moon.
Wow.
I don't know.
You just bleed out more. So you don't want to go to war on a full moon.
Well, you kind of would, though. You go to war under a Mars transit. Obviously, because Mars is god of war. And then you
they're under Mars transit too.
Who? Well, not necessarily. The country's chart. So the country would have a chart. Like where the UK is the 1st of January and July, the US is the 4th of July. So the country has a chart, and then there's transits to that chart.
What's the day of the birth of the country, I guess?
Well, the 4th of July, is easier for the US because everybody knows it. So that's Independence Day, and that's when they signed whatever they signed and declared.
Declaration of Independence, yeah.
Declared independence. And it's at like 3-ish, I can't remember what time, but it's rising Sagittarius, and then that whole chart has all its points.
So
and
when
that's
was
when we
England
had the
born?
US the 1st of January.
How do we know?
Because we know, because history. Before that was 1066. There's a lot of people that still use the 1066 chart. But
I have family who died in the Battle of Hastings.
Gosh,
I've got one of my ancestors in the Battle of Hastings. If you look at the Bayeux Tapestry, and then you've got Harold, who was obviously the king, the France. There was William the Conqueror, and William the Conqueror standing there with a bow. Yeah. And he shot Harold with it, and the guy standing next to him was my ancestors, Count Eustace of Boulogne, who was married to William the Conqueror's cousin. So, yeah,
cool.
There you go.
How on earth do you know that?
I've got royal blood, baby. Family history.
Wow.
My chart's really interesting. We should probably talk afterwards about my bloodline. You might quite like it.
How do you know that? Tell me about that, though, because everyone will want to know that, won't they?
Not all of it's for public knowledge. But we've got, my family researched a family tree. So I've got quite a lot of information about my family tree.
Cool.
So it's from history that we know it's the 1st of January. Where does it come from?
1st of January, it's like 1801, or I think it's 1801. Yeah, it was, and actually I researched it quite a bit. On the 11th of January 2020, I sat in bed reading all about it because I was like, why? What was it? What happened on the 1st of January 1801 or 17? I could Google it now, but basically whenever it was. I've got a whole blog article on it. And we did it because we wanted an agreement with Ireland. So it's when we formed the UK, and we needed their potatoes. So we formed the UK so that we could trade easily, because it was a food issue. And I thought that was really interesting, because the chart was being picked up in 2020. And I was like, oh, food is going to be a really strong theme for for this next cycle.
Oh, because there's going to be food shortages potentially. Some of the people
and if
saying.
COVID came from a bat, I mean, it was distorting of food markets, like food.
Oh, yes.
It started weaving a story, and then with the food shortages, I just don't know what is coming. Do you know?
I'm not a seer, I'm a fixer.
Okay,
no, I don't know. I mean, I'm always erring on the side of good rather than bad. Like I'm positively. What does it say in the charts? Does it look like, a lot of people are very concerned that the bad forces are transcending and the world's going to go to rubbish. Whereas I'm on the side of, God wins, goodness, and God wins, and that it's all going to be brilliant. We're going to have not the Great Reset, the Great Awakening. What does the chart say?
The chart says Pluto's moving into Aquarius, and what are we going to do with that? It's on us. And I think particularly since I've been doing all this work now with the meditation, can we transcend the chart? Can we transcend ourselves? We are unlimited. We can go into infinite space, and we can manifest with something that is unlimited. Why do we have to be limited to this? Everything is going to shit. And there's a lot of negativity. There's a lot of negativity in the spiritual space at the minute, that, the Queen's dead and everything's going to go bad and all the toxic people are going to come out and the Great Reset's going to happen. And I was really into it last year, and it's very, I must wake everyone up. But now I'm more of the idea that we need to just create new ways of being and healing and looking after one another and speaking our truth, and not getting stuck in the anger or the fear, because fear and anger, there were the scared people and there were angry people, and I was definitely with the angry people. But I don't want to be angry. I want to be useful and creative.
Anger.
Huh?
I can dissolve anger. I can dissolve any emotion you got.
Okay, cool. I don't have it anymore. But so I am more of the opinion that we are co-creating. I think the astrology is there, and like we started this conversation with, it's a potential, and we could do work with it the good way or the bad way, and it's on us. It's on the people now to do good stuff with it. And there are some people who are convinced it's bad, and that's what they're creating,
that reality,
and they think they're right, and they want to prove themselves right. I don't know. I don't know why. What is to gain from just being like, this is bad, everything's going to be bad, I'm telling you it's bad. And I take that on board, and I am aware that there is a lot of dark shit out there, but also I feel that the manipulation, and particularly now with food prices and the cost of living and all of that, they are pissing people off, which as far as I'm concerned is good, because people need
take action.
Yeah, and also see that the people in charge aren't helping you, so you just stand on your own 2 feet. And when everybody just realizes that the people in charge are not helping, and that there are some good people, and some people want health and healing and people to get on, but there are some people who just are using and abusing the masses and taking their profits and shaving their profits, and don't give a fuck, and maybe have a lot of issues and trauma and are a bit sadistic. I hear some things, and like what you were just saying about John of God or whatever, you just think, what is wrong with people? Like, what happens? But how can we help each other not get like that, is where I'm at with it.
Yeah, I'm very much a doer. So sitting around and nasal gazing or getting upset about some horrible things which are going in the world doesn't necessarily get you anywhere. What can you do to create a better future for everybody? And just being stressed out about things, you're manifesting a reality that you're not into. Go create something, and it can be on whatever scale that it needs to be, but just go help, go build, go do something useful, whatever it is which is your skill set. Educate people, do whatever it is you're good at doing, and do it well, and don't spend too much time worrying about the bigger stuff unless you can affect. And if you can affect it, go do that. You have to build a better future rather than just sit there and say how crap everything else is. Like, I'm working and doing, providing an alternative to other sorts of medicine. That's what I'm doing. And instead of just saying the medical industry is a piece of crap, you build something which is viable and which is consistent and that works and is an alternative to do it should people choose to want to do it. It's not just sitting there and just being angry. It doesn't get you anywhere. It doesn't get anyone anywhere. And actually it's just makes you pissed off for no particular reason.
It can initiate, it can start, there's a little bit of anger that sometimes gets us moving, which is healthy. It's your Mars in Sag. I suppose just when I'm looking at your chart.
Go on, tell me about my chart then.
Well, it's your Mars in Sag. It's an educator, isn't it? So Mars is how you assert yourself, all of us. Your Mars is how do you act? How do you fight? What is your fight? What does your soldier look like? And Sagittarius
my Mars
is
is education, is it?
Teacher, preacher, travel, philosophy, ideas. So you've got your Mars and Sag. We're like, well, I'm going to roll up my sleeves and teach people and do my podcast, and they can learn because there's more. It's broaden your horizons.
That's funny, isn't it? So go on, tell me about my chart then. Sorry, my
No, keep talking, and I'll do it as you go.
No, that's really interesting. So yeah, that's my fight. Education is my battle to be able to.
That's how you are taking on everything. It's how you are useful. One of the ways you are useful.
Yeah, no, I definitely think so, because I come from this sort of school of thought which more people are actually getting to these days, but I've been sat in it for a decade or more, probably 2 decades.
Are you a life path 22? Sorry,
life plus 22. What
are you?
I don't know what that means.
Oh, you don't know your life path number?
No, but do I?
I don't know. I'm asking.
Is that your numerology in your name?
Numerology of your date of birth.
Then no, I don't know it.
I believe you're a 22. It would make sense.
What is a 22?
And you're born on Thursday, which I like. Because Thursday is Jupiter's day, so it gives you Jupiter rules Sagittarius, so it adds to your sort of teach, preach, make things happen, be an optimist, be a Jupiterian, don't sit around, expand. And the 22 is, so there's 11 different life path numbers, and the 22 is the master builder. So just making shit happen, building empires, basically. in brief?
I'm definitely building an empire. Well, I just think we can empower some. So I think we're all gods and goddesses who have no idea that we're gods and goddesses. And I think most people are just blocked in ways that we can't even understand. And we can literally create heaven on earth and have superpowers. I think having superpowers is bloody normal. I think having diseases is weird. I don't think we should have diseases. I think it's our emotional fixations. I think we can transcend diseases, become blooming angels, and fly around and have a great time. That's the reality that I'm building.
Nice. Do you do much astral travel?
Not really. I spend most of my time I spend a lot of my time in a different dimension, awakening my energy system. So I'm barely here, honestly. And there were days, weeks, months at a time where I couldn't leave my bed because I was so off my tits on energy, basically. Like it's like ecstasy or something. It's like just being in a different dimension and so tired, brain not working. It's a lot more normal nowadays because a lot of people have these sorts of things. But I was so tired
before.
Well, years ago, yeah, not so much nowadays, but I was so tired I couldn't leave my bed. And if I wanted to go and eat, I'd have to sort of crawl down the stairs on my butt and then just sort of crawl around, put the kettle on and eat. I spent years in a trance state, awakening my abilities and awakening superpowers in myself, which I can now awaken in other people. So that's pretty fun. I like superpowers.
Yeah, interesting. Why? That's what I want to know astrologically. Like how did this happen to you? Interesting
DNA. Back to that one again. Okay. I think that this is I just think it's normal. Well, I tell you what, I had a what's it called, Akashic Records reading from a guy called Bill Foss, who's written many books on Akashic Records, and he's fascinating. So he said to me something which I thought it really rung true in me, and it runs true in so many veins of my personality. I had my chart read and everything, he checked my past lives, and he said, look, can I talk to you again? There's something else I'd like to have a conversation with you about. I said, sure. He said, I'm not going to charge you. I've just got some information for you. I went, all right. So I sat down with him again and he said, worked it out. You're from the future. I went, what do you mean? He goes, you are the only person I've ever met who's incarnated backwards, and you come from a world where instant healing of every disease is completely normal. I'm basically the Terminator of healing.
I see. Okay. Do you know why you came back?
To bring healing into the world.
Okay, because I've read that 22s do that. So that, you read all sorts of things and it's not like everything you read is true. But one of the things I've read about 22 is that they chose to come back. They didn't have to come back.
As a bodhisattva as well, isn't it? An awakened being. Yeah, I think is, honestly, it's so strange. I've bought a new house and I'm having things done. And even some of the things I'm having done in the house, they don't exist. Like, I'm like, right, what was I talking to them about? I'm going to have my kitchen foiled with gold foil. Like, I'm having the kitchen cupboards replaced and foiled with gold foil. And they just don't, I'm having to go to a special foiling company because they just don't make gold cupboard doors. And it's just little things that I'm constantly like, but why aren't you doing it like this? But it's constant, like, it would be better if you did it like this. And I'm often, and it's people who are very experienced in trades, but this way would be easier, and this and this and this. It's like, it's literally, I constantly have like, oh, this is from the future. This doesn't exist yet. It's really strange.
Interesting. You have I love that you've got your fourth house in Leo and you want everything gold. Because the fourth house is the home and what it looks like, and you want it regal. You're like, I'll have a gold house, please.
Everything's getting painted gold. I've just got black wardrobes with gold interiors. That's what's happening at them. I've only just come into gold though. I've only liked gold for the last year. Before that, I was a silver kind of gal.
Well, maybe you're coming into yourself more, because Leo should be gold, strictly speaking. The silver, I do not know.
Yeah, but I used to like it. My mom always told me I'd grow into gold, and my goodness, I'm growing into gold. All my cupboards are gold. Like, I've just bought these sideboards and stuff, and they're all gold as well. I'm literally golding the house. My house is black, white, and gold, and then the art is what's popping the color.
Nice.
It's really cool. It's really cool. So, future of healing. What's the future of healing then? Is it just going to be astrological based, or what's your interpretation?
Good question. I my feeling in my bones. So before I became an astrologer and I started doing my Instagram, I was like, astrology is going to be a big thing. I just know. And I said this on a podcast I made myself the other day, that within 2 years, this is going to become like, you know how on it, you got your memes and you got your this and you got your that on Instagram. Within the next 2 years, it's going to be healing. It's going to be every Tom, Dick and Harry is going to be getting into it. And people are going to realize, I don't know how they're going to realize, but they're going to just get into it. They're going to start seeing it. Everyone's going to want to tell their mate. And we are going to see vibrational healing, spiritual healing. We're going to see what's possible. And it's just going to hit the mainstream. All the journalists are going to be writing about it. And it's coming really soon. I don't have detail, in my head about why I think astrology, because medical astrology is obviously a thing that hardly anyone knows exists. But like I said, to be a doctor, all doctors were astrologers 500, 600 years ago. All doctors were astrologers.
In the UK as well as in Italy, or just
everywhere,
in Italy?
Yeah.
Really?
All doctors were astrologers. I mean, someone could probably fact check me on that. That's me being a bit of a sag. But but they were all the educated. Astrology was respected. All kings and queens had astrologers. It just became derided in the Enlightenment. Wow, we all know that. And now here we are. Astrology's hit the mainstream in a big way. And maybe I do wonder if people realize that medical astrology is a thing, that is still the gateway. In the same way that astrology is the gateway drug to spirituality, medical astrology is the gateway to spiritual healing.
Gateway drug, is it?
That's what Ruby Warrington wrote in her book.
Wow. Do you think so? I mean, I've always been fascinated. It just seems like there's a lot to learn to be able to understand everything. It does seem I spent so much time in my trance state that retaining complicated information hasn't been that easy for me to do unless it's medical, and then I can go down that rabbit hole quite easily and then just repeat all sorts of.
Oh, tell me something. Give me an example.
Like what?
I don't know. So when you're in what happens in your trance state?
I'm doolally. Honestly, I'm not. I just can't think straight. I can't really do anything very useful. But then I get more superpowers, and I can do more cool stuff. That's what I do. Yeah. Then I get more superpowers. And then, I mean, the way that I work mainly with healing is I read, there's an amazing textbook, which is called Metaphysical Anatomy by Yvette Rose. And my goodness, it's incredible. It has the emotional reasons behind diseases. I read a passage to somebody, dissolve the emotional reason behind diseases, and then liquid-based diseases pretty often fall away. Solid-based diseases, they're really difficult because there's just so much compression of thought to get there, and I'm edging towards that. But I mean, for example, I worked on a friend of mine the other day who had chronic backache 15 years, was considering surgery, was pretty bad for the longest time. And I was just faffing about it was just one of my mates who was over, and then he didn't know what I did, so I just said, look, I'll tell you what I do. Have you got anything wrong? He said, backache, but you're not going to be able to do anything about that. He's a normal guy. He's not into the spiritual stuff. Bless him. And I read the textbook, and I dissolved all the emotions associated with that. So there's no resonance. And within 5-10 minutes, probably 10 minutes, including reading, and probably about 3-4 minutes healing, the backache's gone. It's been gone for 4 months now. It's gone. Because it's those emotions, those trapped emotions about not feeling supported and various different things which do with backache. Backache's intrinsically about not feeling supported. Dissolve that resonance in his body, all of those thoughts gone, and then the pain just goes. It just doesn't exist within a system. I regularly dissolve things which are said to be quite difficult to do, and I do them quickly and easily and with fun, and making it. I don't know, everyone gets so pious about things. I think you can go and do things quickly and simply. And I think the closer to God you are, the more fun you are, because God is playful. What happens to people is they have more and more trauma. More and more trauma makes you have less of a connection to source and a lot less joy within your heart and within your beingness. So the closer God's a practical joker. The universe, and whatever people want to call it, is just funny and cool and fun. It's the darkness which is heavy. It's the darkness which is rigid and traumatized.
And yeah, I think we need to bring more fun to spirituality as well, because I really felt that when I started, that everyone doing astrology was like so worthy and there was no smiling, and it was like, I'm doing my moon circle, like sad face, and everybody sits there and shares their sadness. I was like, fuck's sake, like astrology is brilliant and it's entertaining, and a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. And I feel like if you can say something to someone that's quite, I don't know, and you deliver it with humor and don't make it so heavy, you make it easier. But I don't know why everyone wants to be so, I don't know, serious.
Pious, boring.
Pious, boring.
Well, I mean, anything needs to be delivered. Any bad news should be delivered with comedy. That's why they used to have court jesters back in the day. If they had to say, oh shit, there's something going on, there's a war going on over here, or your favorite general's just being killed, you'd have the jester do it, because they knew they would be off with their head without it. I mean, I'm a big fan of JP Sears, who he's really funny, and he's delivering, you can send videos about things which are the truth to him, or you can of him to
Forward
other people.
Yeah.
And it's just, it makes it less scary. It makes it more palatable if you don't really want to go down that rabbit hole by yourself and see what the heck's going on in the world, which is a bit wild at the moment. It makes it that, you can sort of have a laugh at it, and it just makes it easy to digest.
Yeah, totally. And I think there's a place for the sacred as well. I can see that there is. It just never attracted me. I mean, I like a sacred moment, I really do, but I think making all of astrology quite somber wasn't for me.
I find that with healing as well, and all these long ceremonies, and I piss people off though, because I'm pretty well pitch perfect with healing. I sort of watch something and go do it, and it pisses people off because I've just got this. I do something called higher level magic. So higher level magic is awakening your ability. So most healing and even astrology is something called lower level magic, where you're using an external thing to get to where you're trying to get to. So you're using a spell, you're using a potion, you're using an angel, you're using some sort of being, you're using some sort of ceremony, something, an intermediary of some description. I do higher level magic, which is awakening your God self. So you can do these things first time, every time, consistently, without actually having to do any sort of ceremony to it. You just awaken your ability to do it, and it's as easy as doing anything else. You set the intention, shit happens. But with other people, because I've watched ceremonies before and they've done a 2-hour ceremony, and I'm like, what are you doing? At the end, they're like, right, I'm like, well, you should have just done this. Then I can go and teach them the thing they've been doing for 30 years. Yeah, I go, I didn't get liked very much for that.
Mars and Sag. Also.
Go on, tell me about my chart a bit more then. Anything else you've got to add to that?
Well, that's the other side to Mars and Sag, isn't it? So Mars and Sag is inspiring the teacher, but it is a Sagittarius energy, speaking as a Sag, is a bit like, I know more, I know better. I've got the answer. You don't need to give me your opinion because I already know best.
I've got a bit of that going on.
So that's sad. It's why it's funny. And yeah, that is why. And you're quick as well, because Mercury is your chart ruler, as your rising Gemini, and Gemini is ruled by Mercury. So Mercury's very, very quick. In there, in out, bish bash bosh. And you're 22, so you're quick. You've got an inner knowing. And that's not for everyone yet. You're you're ramping things up and doing things in your very nifty, quick way. And also with the Mars and Sag, and being a Scorpio, you cut to the chase, no bullshit, get on with it. Come on, let's go. So that's your vibe, I guess.
Yeah, and it does annoy me, slowness. I just want things done, and then we can just, get on with it, and then go have fun, go surfing.
Yeah, I was thinking about this yesterday. Do you know A.D. Lloyd, magician?
No.
I bumped into him. I met him Halloween 2020, and I bumped into him on the tube last week. And I was just desperate to leave. I was at an event, and the Queen had just died. It was on Friday, whatever it was. And I had so much to talk about, and I just wanted to come home and just create, when you've got burning content, when you want to write something, or you must have this, I'm sure you relate.
I had that waking up at 2:00 in the morning on Friday morning, and having to start writing until 7:00 in the morning, 8:00 in the morning. Then I had builders here and couldn't go back to bed. So yeah, I went to bed at about like 10, and I was bubbling words in me. And then it was 2:00 in the morning, and I was like, I had to just get there and just start writing. So maybe Friday was a particularly creative day.
ooh, I'll look at the astrology. But yeah, it was burning up. And he was like, why, what's the rush? I was like, I just want to go. And I think there's this belief or idea that to be spiritual and to be a good, whole, balanced, kind, calm, wise person, you have to do shit slowly. And I was like, there's a lot of very mindful, mindless slowness. I was like, I know that I want to create. I don't want to hurt anyone, but I don't have time to waste. I'm just really excited. I'm really enthusiastic. I just want to go. And I'm and it's excitement, and it's making me walk fast, and it's making me go. And you can be mindful and fast. And
see, I think that people nasal gaze too much. And I think people are obsessed with things like chakras, which I've transcended, by the way. I smashed them up, and they're now holistic rather than having this compartmentalized things or it's section. I've opened mine up so they're all over my system rather than little bits. But I think people get fixated on one piece of a million-piece puzzle and don't solve the other bloody problems. Like, there are so many things to do. Let's go in there. Let's fix this, do everything. There's so much to do. And if you get stuck in one place, you're not going to get that far. We've got so much work to do to get into this fifth dimensional space. There's stuff to do, but you can also be calm. You can be, I'm this oxymoron because I'm like really excitable and super calm at the same time. So people feel calm when they're in my presence. And yeah, I can be running around like a lunatic. You can be having a high vibration, a calming, peaceful vibration, and still be
rapid.
fast.
Well, yeah, you can if you've got the moon in Taurus and Mars in Sag.
Oh, am I lucky then?
Yeah. I mean, I'm moon in Taurus, sun in Sag. So I get that, because the Taurus moon is calm. You open a book, read about moon in Taurus. It says other people will find you very calm to be around. It holds, Taurus energy holds space. There's a natural being able to tolerate. It's unmoving. It's Taurus. So deep down, I'm steady.
But I didn't used to be.
Well, you weren't in your moon. You were in your masculine, I presume.
I don't know. I've just done a lot of healing on myself so that I'm no longer.
But your
so my vibration
hidden.
is higher.
I imagine your moon. Yeah, your moon is in the 12th house, so you wouldn't have known it was there. You wouldn't have been connected to that, I imagine, until later in life. Because it's hard to find. Liz Green, my favorite astrologer, there's a line in the book for a woman with sun in the 7th and her moon tucked away in the 12th. She might not even know she is feminine until very much later in life, because you would identify so much with being a doer and being active and being all these things, and with the emotional stuff just really lost, really not available as being part of your consciousness straight away. Could be, but it's also understandable that you had a much easier resonance with those yang energies.
Interesting. So tell me about the moon journal, how to work with the moon.
Oh yeah. I never talk about this ever, but you said, what would you like to talk about? So, what would I? So I write a moon journal. I've written it 2020, 2021, 2022. So I'm writing my 4th one now. And I just write, I get the charts, pull tarot cards, sort of write about the year and when the intentions to set and what we might be feeling, and journal prompts and all the rest of it. So I'm just editing the 4th one now.
Ooh. And what do you think of the potential of having an extra sign of the zodiac? There's this 13 sign things. Do we think that's true? Because some people are saying that the year doesn't start, the 1st of January isn't the beginning of the year, the 22nd of March, beginning of spring is supposed to be the beginning. Like, I was seeing something about it the other day, and if you look at the December deck is 10, and August, I don't know if the Gregorian calendar has been changed in some way that it shouldn't have been, and potentially having 13, because it works better if you divide the months into 13 rather than 12. You don't have this leap year, and they're all 30 days, or I've probably got the maths wrong, but
calendar,
they were all the same.
Because we have 13 moons a year. There's 13 full moons, 13 new moons, but it's feminine and it's wonky. It's not an easy pattern, so they didn't do that, and we have the 12 months and the 12 signs of the zodiac. Now Ophiuchus is the 13th sign, And so there's obviously loads and loads of constellations in the sky, but we use the constellations that are across the ecliptic, and the ecliptic is the path that we travel around the sun. And so that is the path we use. And the foot of the fuchsia dips into the ecliptic. So mainly the constellation is above it, but it's just the foot that's between Scorpio and Sagittarius. And it's a couple of stars. And so you could use it, you could think about it, because there's loads of other stars. You know, when you're astrology using Sirius and Regulus and all the Algol, there's loads of stars. There's loads. Astrology, we're using the zodiac signs, but then we've got more planets, and we've got planets we probably don't know about, and we've got more stars, and we're only using 2D. We'll start using 3D astrology. You could use a fuchsia. There are some astrologers, you know, it's their USP. It gives them something to differentiate from other people, but it's not really there, and it's not been considered throughout history. And it's a big history that's overlapped through many cultures. So the astrological new year is 21st, 20th, 22nd of March, depending on leap years and all the rest of it. And that is equinox. And the Persian New Year, so the Persians use that as their new year anyway. So I would always like to celebrate it because it makes sense to start from equinox. There is a pulse point there, but that is still not 0 degrees Aries if you're going to strictly look at the constellations, because of precession of the equinox and the earth wobble. So that's still 23 days later. The Gregorian calendar, I don't know. I know a lot of people don't like it because they don't like the patriarchy, and it's like outdated, and why do we have to work with it? But I do like the numerology of it. I'm very aligned with numerology, and I think it works. And I love to see the numerology of the year and the numerology of the months, and I vibrate with it. But maybe that's just because I believe it. If there was another system, I could probably get in with that. I also think Vedic astrology works. Vedic astrology being Western astrology, the one that's 23 days behind. I like it. It makes sense to me. And some astrologers were like, no, it's nonsense. I'm like, you can't say that. Like, the whole of India is working off that. And it works for them. And it works for me. But so does Western. We live in an infinite possibility, and the energies somehow work. Maybe because we're just collapsing matter and we're making something true. But there are definitely patterns, and it all reveals there is truth. But how? It's vibration, I think, isn't it? It's energetics.
So, how old is astrology?
Very. Babylonians. 6,000.
Thousands and thousands of years people were using it.
Yeah, I don't know when the Babylonian period was, but around then.
And anything else you want to do before we get your contact details in case people want to book in with you? What services do you provide?
Good question. I teach a lot and put on group programs. There are one-to-ones that kind of full-ish at the moment, but I open them up here and there when I know that there's going to be time to do good work. So yeah, that's it. I think there's a lot of group things, events, monthly moon events, numerology events. I teach all of the above.
And how do people find you, my dear?
They find me at Francesca Oddie Astrology on Instagrams, and I'm redoing my website at the minute, which is francescaoddie.com. There's lots of scammers. You have this problem too, don't you?
Mm-hmm. Everyone wants to be us, darling. Well, actually, just try and take money off our followers, but yeah.
Yeah, so I always just like to alert that to people now when I'm saying follow me at Francesca Oddie Astrology. If someone follows you back within 2 weeks and starts asking you for $30 in your palm, block them, because it's not me or Antonia.
Yeah, we don't. Well, I don't think any people who are legitimate in the spiritual world actually say, I do readings, give me some money. I don't know anyone that does, and I know that I get regular messages from people saying do that, so it's a load of nonsense, really. So just anyone, never respond to that.
Just be careful.
And then they put an extra dot in your name, or they put an extra letter.
It's really hard to read sometimes. I mean, I don't spot it. I'm like, they've cloned me. This isn't me, but I can't see. There's an extra E in my name.
O or something, because if you did your name Oddie and you put an extra O, next to the 2 Ds, you might not notice that as an extra letter in there.
Exactly, in the I's and the E's.
So, okay, wonderful. Is there anything else you'd like to add, my love?
I don't think so. That was very interesting. I'm gonna stalk you more.
Thank you very much, and see you later, everybody. Francesca, just stay on for a minute. Bye, everyone. Thank you. Okay. Recording stop.